So here's my primary concern with the 2024 election. Right now in national polls, Donald Trump is leading Joe Biden by about 4 percentage points. Now, as we know, in the United States, we do not elect the president based upon the national popular vote. The president elected based upon the Electoral College. So if we look at the aggregator site 270 to win, which will show polls on a breakdown per state, and not every state has a poll for the 2024 presidential election, but based upon what states they do have, it currently shows Donald Trump with 288 electoral votes to Joe Biden's 134. So Donald Trump has a clear lead in the Electoral College based upon polls. And in fact, even though not all states have polls registered, there would be enough with 288 electoral votes for Donald Trump to win as it stands right now. But this is based upon polling data. The question we have to ask ourselves is, who answers polls? Now, we have known since around 10 years ago that polling methodology has become increasingly unreliable. Remember the red wave that was supposed to happen in 2022 and never materialized. It was a slight trickle. It was enough for the Republicans to take control of the House, but only barely, by the barest of margins. And now, with Ken Buck's resignation, they're now at a point where they only have 218 seats. So they barely have a majority at all. So polling methodology has become increasingly unreliable. Who answers polls? Well, to a large extent, people who have landlines. People who are willing to get a phone call on their cell phone that says unknown number or political research and are still willing to answer that phone call. People who get text messages that say, "Are you willing to take this poll?" And they're like, "Sure, yes, I'm willing to spend some time to take this poll." To a large extent, you're talking about people who are 50 and older. If you take a look at the skew in this country, people 50 and older tend to skew Republican in their voting habits. I believe it's about 60% to 40%. People who are 35 and under don't have landlines. They don't answer phone calls from unknown numbers. A lot of, if they're young enough, they don't answer phone calls at all. Also, people who are 35 and under tend to skew Democrat about 70% to 30%. So, what you're finding is that people who are more likely to vote Republican are the ones who are also more likely to respond to polls. So, there is a clear skew taking place in the polling data. Despite that, you have mainstream media outlets who are consistently reporting that Donald Trump is up over Joe Biden in national polls. He's up 4%, he's up 6%. It changes, it fluctuates, but it's been fairly consistent that they have been showing that Donald Trump is leading Joe Biden in national polls. So what happens when we get to November? What happens when the voters show up who are people who don't respond to polls? What happens when the unlikely voter shows up? You end up with a situation in which Democrats win the election, but polling data has consistently said that Republicans were going to win. What happens then when Donald Trump cries foul and there is armed rebellion because he says that the election was rigged yet again?